And then there were 8. The divisional round will kick off Saturday on CBS in the Music City when the top-seeded Titans welcome a streak of hungry Bengals.
I said the standard was a Super Bowl. That's one. We got more to go, baby. Let's go. Let's go.
And if you hear the horns, that ain't no honky-tonk. Instead, the expected return of the king. Sidelined since Week 8, the reigning Offensive Player of the Year, Derrick Henry, returns to assume his seat atop a throne of would-be tacklers.
Yeah, you definitely appreciate this game a lot more when you're away from it. I'm just glad that I was able to get through it and happy to be back.
But what's a king without a crown? Standing in his way, the potential heir to the quarterback throne. 6 foot 4 inches of swagger personified. Joey Franchise, fazed by nothing, intimidated by no one.
This was expected. This isn't like the icing on top of the cake or anything. This is the cake.
While the future may reside in Cincy, the present makes its home at Lambeau. In the nightcap, reigning league MVP Aaron Rodgers looked to make good on a promise uttered 17 years ago.
How disappointed are you that you will not be a 49er?
Not as disappointed as the 49ers will be that they didn't draft me.
Hollow words in his postseason past. The generational talent, 0-3 career in the playoffs against his hometown team. The NorCal kid, now grizzled vet, will lead a well-rested Packers team against a physical 49ers squad.
This doesn't have to do with the last time we met in the playoffs, and it doesn't have to do with our game earlier this year. It's this team right now versus their team, and it's going to be as simple as that.
So would you rather be a force in motion or an immovable object lying in wait? This is no physics lesson, rather history playing out in front of our eyes. A history that hinges on moments, and that moment is now.
Thank you, Joe Musso. The last time the Cincinnati Bengals won a divisional playoff game, the internet was not available for public use. Oh, how things have changed. And now the Bengals look to end that drought, and by doing so, win their first road playoff game ever. Underdogs as they take on the Titans. The NFC game, 49ers at Lambeau to take on the Packers. Our Danny Kanell said on Thursday that he expects a big game from Aaron Rodgers as he looks to cap an MVP season with another ring. And speaking of Mr. Kanell, we now welcome him into the studio alongside our 2-time Super Bowl champion, Bryant McFadden, who's joining us remotely. How are you guys feeling about the games coming up today?
I think we're going to get better games today than we got last weekend, right? We got some games that got sideways. I think these games, they're better matchups, and I think we'll see some kind of late game heroics that are going to take place today.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, one step closer to finding out who will be playing in the Super Bowl. But most importantly for me, guys, I got some money on a lot of ball games that we will see today and tomorrow. So I'm just more concerned about me cashing in on my bets.
And that's one of the reasons why we got you here. Let's start with the big news for Tennessee on Friday, the return of the king, Derrick Henry. He said he wasn't sure what his workload would be, but it's being reported that there will be no restrictions on his gameplay today. He said he's ready to do whatever. What are your expectations from today, Danny?
So this is sort of the great unknown, right? And we're all going to watch this closely as this game unfolds. But my hunch tells me you're not going to see that much of an impact from his style of play because he's not a back that's incredibly shifty or small and needs to work on his jukes and has to out-juke people. He's not a back that relies on his speed to kind of pull away. This is the definition of a power back. I mean, this guy thrives off of his size and just massive nature of being able to run over people. So I think his ankle, I think they probably will have him on some sort of a pitch count, Jeremy. I don't know exactly what that number is, but I think you'll see the normal Derrick Henry that you always get, maybe just a little bit less of him. But here's what I think is important. When he's on the field, I mean, you're talking about an MVP candidate, one of the best backs in the league, and people know what he means to this offense. He's going to draw attention from the defense, which opens up the pass game, the play-action pass game. It opens up everything, opens up the windows in the pass game. So that, to me, is where, even if you don't get 100 yards plus rushing on 25 carries, just the fact of him being on the field is going to be of great importance for this Titans team.
No question. His presence is very, very important for the Tennessee Titans offense. I expect to see double-digit carries. Now, will it be close to 10 carries or close to 20 carries? I don't know. It depends on how conditioned he is and where his injury is regarding his foot. But most importantly for the Tennessee Titans, remember when they were without Derrick Henry, Foreman, who filled in for Derrick Henry, played exceptionally well. So it's not just about having Derrick Henry, but when he is not in the lineup, you still have a power-like back coming downhill on the Cincinnati Bengals in the trenches. This will be a physical ball game. I like to identify the Tennessee Titans as the San Francisco 49ers of the AFC, the way how they attack the game offensively. They love to come straight down the teeth of opposing defenses, and they've been so successful in doing so, especially at home.
BMAC, obviously the Bengals have been preparing as if Henry will be back. So when you look at them as they come into this one as the underdogs, what are the keys to them grabbing the upset here?
Well, number one, offensively, they got to find a way to protect their quarterback in Joe Burrow. They did a real good job last week against the Las Vegas Raiders. I think they didn't surrender one sack. But remember, throughout the course of the regular season, Joe Burrow was sacked the most out of every quarterback in the National Football League. 51 sacks. They surrendered to opposing defenses. Why that stat is significant in today's ball game is because the Tennessee Titans, defensively, they finished top 10 in the regular season in sacks. They got 43 sacks, so they've done a real good job in being exotic and collapsing the pressure of the pocket and putting pressure on quarterbacks, and most importantly, sacking those guys. If Cincinnati has issues in protecting Joe Burrow, especially on the road, it could be a very, very difficult ball game for them offensively.
Yeah, BMAC, totally agree. And Jeremy, we could sit here and say, well, they got to get Mixon going. They got to get the run game going. Don't turn the ball over. Like, these are two of the critical keys to success. But it does revolve around protecting Joe Burrow. I mean, this quarterback has been playing as good as any of these elite superstars on the back month of the season and carried it over last week in his first playoff game against the Raiders. But the Raiders, and BMAC makes a great point, they did not sack him on the day, but their style of play was really to rush the front four up front. They don't blitz a ton, a lot of cover three behind it. That'll be different today. So it'll be blitz pickups from the Tennessee Titans from Cincinnati to be able to protect Joe Burrow. And then for the receivers on the outside of getting off jams, getting open, giving him targets to throw to so they can get the ball out of his hands quickly. So same page as BMAC. It comes down to the Bengals are to win this game. They will have to protect Joe Burrow as great as they can.
Obviously a very different defense than what they faced against the Las Vegas Raiders last week. Okay, so then Danny, is there a particular matchup that you're watching in this game?
It's similar storyline here, Jeremy. It's the interior of the Bengals offensive line versus the interior pass rush of the Tennessee Titans. So you're talking center and the two guards, and then you're talking the tackles and the linebackers too, because that to me is where you get linebacker blitzes up the middle. And it's one thing to see pressure off the edge, whether it's a defensive end or a linebacker or a safety off the edge. You can see it better as a quarterback. You can step up in the pocket. There's a back there that typically can chip, or you can keep a tight end in. But I'm worried about the middle of this Tennessee Titans defense, because for a quarterback, you're used to stepping up, and then that rush goes right up past you, and then it kind of calms down, and then the passing lanes open up, and you can see things down the field. But if you get interior pressure, you step up, and there's either somebody right in your lap, or you can't step up because there's pressure in your face. So for me, that is critical, even more than the outside edge pass rush. It's the interior pass rush of that Titans defense versus the interior of the Bengals offensive line.
Yeah, well, my top matchup clearly is about protecting Joe Burrow, but outside of that, the king is returning to his castle. Will he be able to sit on the throne, or will he be outside of the castle? That's a huge matchup for me with Cincinnati, because Cincinnati, when you look at the physical nature that we've seen with teams in the playoff on the defensive side, they're not known to be a physical bunch at the line of scrimmage. And if you look at these highlights right here, when that this big back gets rolling deep downhill, good luck in trying to stop him. And if you're Cincinnati, this has been an issue for you from times, at certain moments throughout the course of the year. If this guy is rolling, man, it will be a long, long day for the defenders that's playing for Cincinnati and trying to stop him, not to mention how important is Derrick Henry to the play-action game. When he is rolling, Ryan Tannehill is at his best. A.J. Brown is at his best. Don't forget about journeyman Julio Jones as well. But it all starts and stops with the king. If he's rolling and if he's sitting on that throne, man, this offense can be very, very prolific.
This is HQ, brought to you by Papa John's. Better ingredients, better pizza. All right, let's finish things off with a pick here. Titans giving 3.5, the over-under at 47.5. I'm actually surprised that the line has not moved since Derrick Henry's announcement that he's coming back. It's still staying at the 3.5. B-Mac, you told us you got some money rolling throughout the weekend. What's your play on this one today?
I feel real good. I woke up smiling. I plan on having me a nice, sexy breakfast to get prepared to see some good football and get prepared to have my pockets filled up. I'm taking Tennessee. You know why? We talked about Derrick Henry. We talked about the concerns in protecting Joe Burrow. But outside of that, let's highlight the head man in charge, Mike Vrabel. Looking at Mike Vrabel, he is 8-0 straight up, 8-0 ATS when given 8+ days to prepare for a ball game. That is spectacular. Not to mention, he is 4-0 ATS following a bye. They had a bye week last week. That stat is very, very significant. He is 4-0 ATS following a bye. And you look at this stat right here on your graphic, his offenses in this 8-0 stretch, being straight up and 8-0 ATS, his offense has averaged 29 points per ball game. When I saw that stat and knowing that the king will be returning, I put all of my chips on the Tennessee Titans. So you guys, listen, 3.5, I know sometimes the hook can be a little scary, but if you're not quite sure about the hook, you can buy it down. See if you can get it down to 2.5. That way a field goal gets you all the way in the door. I don't want the 3 points. They can have the 3.5. I'm taking Tennessee.
I don't know about you, Jeremy, but I'm trying to figure out what defines a
No,
sexy
I want to know what
breakfast.
that's a follow-up. Go, but give us the pick. That's the follow-up.
All right.
I want to know what the sexy breakfast is, but go ahead.
All right, so I am on the exact opposite side here. He brings up some great points. B-Mac does. My fellow Florida State Seminole, of course, he would have some notes prepared for this, but I'm going to look at it the flip side because this Bengals team has been playing in a playoff-type atmosphere for over a month now, having to play their way in, already playing a game last week. So they're kind of in this mindset. Tennessee, for me, off the bye week, does that slow them down? There's too many question marks about Derrick Henry. Are we getting somebody who's just going to come back, who's just really out there to be a decoy, or are we going to get the full Derrick Henry? I do think Joe Burrow, too, is the quarterback edge in this one, the better quarterback, which is crazy, thinking a guy this young versus a seasoned veteran like Ryan Tannehill. But I think Joe Burrow has that moxie, and he's got playmakers to work with on the outside, and he's got enough mobility. If pass protection does break down, he can make plays outside the pocket, find one of his many weapons on the outside. So I'm going to take those 3.5 points, and I don't even hate it if you want to take the outright upset.
Okay, and before we go, B-Mac, I think I've been doing it wrong. What is a sexy breakfast?
Usually you might get the scrambled eggs and just bacon and sausage. When it's game day, when you have money on the line, I usually go to my sexy breakfast style of meal where you dice it up with some tomatoes, with some onions, maybe some mushrooms. It's not necessarily an omelet, but it's a little sexy. You spice it up a little bit. You know what I mean? I don't do the usual biscuit. I might go a little exotic, go a little English muffin a little bit with toasted edges. That's what I consider to be a sexy breakfast.
My Cinnamon Toast Crunch isn't cutting it. Not cutting it on game day. Our daddy Kanell and Bryant McFadden helping us set up the opening game of the Divisional playoff Saturday in the NFL. Bengals-Titans matchup is a game you can see on CBS with or without a sexy breakfast. The only time these two have played each other was in the 1990 wildcard game. The Bengals beat the then Houston Oilers 41-14. Love to do it again, but it'll be a tough matchup this time around. This one kicking off 4:30 p.m. Eastern time on CBS and streaming on Paramount+. Then we also have the Bills at the Chiefs coming up on Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.